Andrew Urquhart with you on the program today. I don't know if you're much of a board gamer. If you play board games, what do you like in particular? Monopoly, there's a good start for a family argument. Or what about Risk? You know, that game where you roll the dice and you basically plot to take over the world. That can get particularly nasty, especially if you start off in Australia for obvious reasons. Well, it's kind of like that, as it turns out, for the Free Speech Union. Maybe I'm overplaying this, but it seems that the Free Speech Union, I just thought it was just a Kiwi thing, but no, it's all part of a global empire and possibly a conspiracy. Jonathan Ayling, who is the New Zealand lieutenant of this empire, joins me on the program. Jonathan, kia ora, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Now, a bit of tongue-in-cheek on this one, but finding out recently that Free Speech Union New Zealand isn't the only free speech union, because the head of Free Speech Union UK is in New Zealand at the moment. So is it a kind of a king and country type thing, that it started off in the mother country and is spreading to the other parts of the fading British Empire? How's it working, Jonathan?
Well, this wasn't exactly the way I would have presented it, but Toby Young, who's the director of the Free Speech Union UK and one of the associate editors of The Spectator, who we're touring with here, he's coming in referring to himself as the King Charles figure, with me as his Governor General, and that's how very imperial of him. So we might have a revolution on our hands before too long.
Now, hey, like the British Commonwealth, the long may he reign, and all of that type of stuff, it is perhaps a loose affiliation of like-minded interests rather than the crushing jackboot of imperialism. Would that be fair?
That's exactly right. Look, Canada and Australia and New Zealand and the UK all have Labour parties, and it's a very similar dynamic. We're sister organisations. We work closely together, pushing to accomplish similar aims, but we're not responsible for them, and they're not responsible for us. And it's exciting. We are continuing to expand, responding to what is a threat in New Zealand and across the Anglosphere. And a lot of people see free speech in decline. It's something to be said, especially for English-speaking countries. And one of the reasons I think that's true, Andrew, is because English-speaking countries have embraced personal freedoms and civil liberties more than really any other parts of human civilization ever in the world. These are Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK, the United States, and South Africa. This is the Anglosphere, and these are some of the most stable, peaceful, prosperous countries humanity has ever known. And there's no coincidence there. It is linked to the very basic, fundamental individual rights that we let people speak, we let people think freely. And as affronts are made to these liberties, well, there's a bit of cooperation emerging to push back. And so we have, as your listeners may already know, in the UK, in Australia, and in South Africa, free speech unions operating there. The Free Speech in New Zealand is certainly one of the largest and most successful, but there are others around the world also, and we're just about to launch one in Canada, hopefully before the end of the year. And if your listeners know anything about what's happening in Canada, it's about as dismal as it gets in the West at the moment in terms of those basic freedoms and the rise of authoritarianism. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Now, you could perhaps, from a Canadian point of view, it's more of an Empire Strikes Back situation. Not that you want to be too much associated with the Star Wars metaphor, because the Empire wasn't the good guys in that regard. But interested you mentioned... Exactly, you got your own theme music at least. Interesting you mentioned the United States, part of the Anglosphere, although, I mean, surely it's the land of the free and the home of the brave. They've got a constitution. What do they need the Free Speech Union for?
Yeah, you're right to an extent there, Andrew, and I think that is a common perspective. Surely not in the United States. It's the land that has epitomized obnoxious people not having accountability for what they're saying. And yet I think there's a bit of a difference there, and not to be politically nerdy too much, but if you'll indulge me for a moment, New Zealand and the UK are different from Australia or Canada and the United States in that we don't have a single constitution. And a number of our supporters go, this is why our rights have been eroded. This is why we're not able to be as free as we'd like, because we haven't got this supreme law. I disagree with them on that. And as I engage at quite senior levels with free speech advocates in the United States, all they do is talk about the Constitution. All they do is say, this is our right. You can't undo it. Nah, 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 nah. And they don't make the case. They don't persuade it. And so while in the United States, yes, the First Amendment is still very strong and defends people's speech, they haven't convinced the public, and as a cultural value, they're losing a lot of ground. That not only is this the law, but this should be the law. This is how our societies pursue complex and controversial subjects. This is how we can have the greatest peace. This is how we can have the greatest prosperity. And so in New Zealand and in the UK, we have to go out every day and make the case.
Yep.
Because if we don't, tomorrow they can change the law, they can limit our speech, and there's no constitution to stop them. And I think we're better off for it, because we have to persuade people.
Now, when it comes to free speech issues, honestly, comparing us to the United States, I think I'd rather have our problems than their problems. Just, just saying, very difficult to have a non-heated conversation on some topics in the United States. Focusing in on Toby Young, though, as you mentioned, he's the head of Free Speech Union, the founding father of the global empire, as it were, in New Zealand at the moment. I mean, as you would expect. Somebody who has got a thing or two to say on a range of topics, some of which controversial, perhaps?
Of course. I mean, free speech isn't worth very much unless it allows us to say things that are controversial.
Yep.
No one's ever had a problem with free speech when we all agree on it. There's a bit of sweet irony, and this is a Christian station, so I won't couch it in terms of revenge, but probably in other spaces that's exactly what it is. I've just come from a function with Toby Young, and there were about 50 or so business people from the community here, a bit of an establishment crowd, and the mayor Wayne Brown was there as well, and of course for the long-time supporters of the Free Speech Union, they'll know that our outfit was initially set up when Phil Goff, the previous Auckland mayor, tried to oversee what opinions would and would not be allowed in his domain, and shut out certain controversial perspectives from public venues here in Auckland. And we ended up setting up to challenge that, and went all the way to the Supreme Court on that. The picture that we've put up of Wayne Brown with Toby Young, I think in many ways epitomizes the response and the success that the Free Speech Union has had in New Zealand over the past 6 years or so, in that now the Mayor of Auckland is there welcoming him open arms, and the Free Speech Union has been able to make the case that our leaders and our political overlords deciding which opinions we get to engage with is not good for us in the long term. And so we're going to be traveling around the country with Toby Young. We've had a couple of fantastic events in Auckland, standing room only last night at our public meeting with him, as about 150 were swarmed into a smaller pub than we probably should have booked. But tonight we'll be down in Tauranga, and on a slightly different subject, but democracy is yet again going to be welcomed back to Tauranga City. Of course, they've got their local elections there shortly, and foolishly we booked our event with Toby Young and Tauranga on the same night as they are having one of their big election debates. And we decided we wouldn't want to compete with that crowd. So we've actually shifted it to tonight. If any of you were planning on coming to our event, it'll be at 6:30 this evening. But traveling around the country, continue to make the case that the English-speaking world and the culture that we have embraced in the West has led to the greatest inclusion of minorities and the greatest tolerance and the lowest expression of violence. All the narrative of what we claim, or some claim, free speech opposes, actually, in fact, is built up by free speech, and we're going to continue to make that case.
And I think, I suppose one of the principles of free speech, and demonstrated perhaps in the structure of the organisation globally, is yes, we have our differences. Yes, we have different ways of doing things and different ways of looking at things, different priorities. But there is much that we have in common, and let's not lose sight of celebrating that in the details of the things that we may have differences of opinion in. If people wanted to find out more about the Free Speech Union generally, or in particular find out about Toby Young and his upcoming speaking engagements, of course, FSU.nz is the place to go. Jonathan, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.